In this activity, we are going to work with content and add HTML to add this structure to the web page. So you should already have downloaded Learning HTML and stored it in a folder named HTML, and then inside that same folder have a folder called Images with the images that were included on the activity. So now that we have these downloaded and ready to go, we need to be able to look at our HTML file in two places. We need it open in the editor so we can make changes to it, and open in the browser so we can see it. By default, your operating system will either automatically open it in the browser or in the editor. Mine is set to open in the editor, and I can tell that by looking at the little icon by it. If your icon is your favorite browser, then you can just double click on here and it will open automatically in there. Let me show you the manual way to open these. So in the browser, use Control-O if you're using a Windows machine, or Command-O if you're using a Mac machine. And then you just need to be able to go to where that file is. So I'm in this HTML folder, which is where I want to be, and there's that file, Learning HTML. I double click on it and it opens. Now notice that it looks all bunched up together. This is because browsers interpret white space in an HTML file as a single space. So whether it's a tab or a blank line or a carriage return, any of that white space is replaced with a single space. So everything looks bunched up together. Right now that doesn't look good. That works out to be our advantage, because now when we open it in the editor, we can add whatever white space we want for organization and for making it look nice without that white space showing up in the browser. To open up in the editor, just simply do Open File. Again, browse to the location where it is and open it up. So here's our content that we want to add HTML to. So HTML consists of tags, and tags start with a less than sign, and then the tag name. Here we're going to do body, and that's what a tag looks like. Less than, tag name, greater than. And then there is a closing one. Now here's the matching closing tag. Notice that it also has less than, greater than signs. The tag name, the one thing that has in addition is this slash, and that identifies it as the closing tag that matches this opening body tag. So the body tag surrounds all of the content. So whatever it is that's showing up in the web page should be contained inside the body. So that's all I have in this file is content. So I'm going to put the opening body tag at the very top and the closing body tag at the very bottom. Now, you will be turning in all of your work. I want you to work along with me. So when I do something, you do it too. You can pause the video or fast forward if you're slower or faster than me. But go ahead and do this to your file as we go along, so that when you're done, you'll have what you need to turn in. So there I've got all of my content inside the body tags. Now to see it in the browser, I have to do two things. I have to save it here. So I just saved it, and most editors have a way for you to be able to tell whether it's been saved or not. And then in the browser, I need to refresh. Notice that adding the body tags didn't change anything. And that's what we expect. They just identify, they just contain, but don't make any changes to the content. The next tag that we are going to learn is the paragraph tag. And remember that in content we don't have any notation for paragraphs. So we're just going to, so we can find the paragraphs because they're just sections of text that have no notation. So here's one right here. And what we're going to do is the tag that works with a paragraph is a P tag. So we're going to add the opening P tag at the beginning of that paragraph and a closing P tag at the end of it. So we have surrounded the paragraph with opening and closing tags. So there's the opening tag, the closing tag, and then between the two tags is the content. All right, again, we're going to save this and refresh it in the browser. Oops, wrong window. Refresh it in the browser, and now we see that something happens. So now this one thing has been, right, this one paragraph has the HTML that says, make this look like a paragraph. Well, a paragraph is a block element. So whenever you have a block element, you get a blank line before and a blank line after. And that's what we see here. We see the paragraph with a blank line before and a blank line after. And we're starting to see how HTML makes a difference to the structure. So now pause the video. There are 9 more paragraphs in here. So pause the video and go ahead and add those 9 paragraphs. Were you able to find all of those paragraphs? Now, after you've done that, added opening and closing p tags to all the paragraphs, then you want to go ahead and save and refresh in the browser. And we see those paragraphs all set aside. Now notice the headings are showing up just the way we have them in the editor. This is not how we're going to want them in the end, but right now all we have coded are the paragraphs. So there's the paragraph tags. All right, let's go ahead and learn about heading tags. Now there are 6 different kinds of heading tags. Here I'm going to take you to the W3 Schools HTML tag reference. And this is a really cool tool that lets you, it identifies all the tags that exist, all the HTML tags. So once you know how HTML tags work, you can use this reference to get lots of information. And the nice thing about this, we're going to go to the heading tags right now. So heading tags are H1 to H6. And here they show you what they look like. They give you descriptions about them, and they allow you to try it yourself. So here they've got heading 1 through heading 6. And when you try it yourself, then you get to see what that looks like. You see the code and what it looks like. So notice that with headings, you get different font size, and they're all bolded. So that style you get with them, we're not going to worry too much about the style, because when we start doing CSS, we'll make our own style. What you want to pay attention to when you're deciding on headings is the importance of them. So you want to use headings in a hierarchical fashion, so that the most important thing is a heading 1, and then the subheadings that are of the next most importance would be a heading 2. And you go down then in importance based on that structure of your web page and what you want to be. Remember that we did this in content. So we've already identified that this is our main heading. So we're going to add heading 1 tags here. So put the opening heading tag at the beginning. Get rid of the note. We no longer need that, because that just reminded us of what kind of heading it is. And then put a closing heading 1 tag after it. All right, as you look through here, you'll be able to find 4 headings that are level 2 headings and 5 headings that are level 3 headings. Go ahead and put H2s around the level 2 headings and H3s around each of the heading 3, that subheading 3 headings. You can pause now to do that. Okay, now that you have added all those headings, we can look at what that looks like in the browser. And there you see the headings show up, with that main heading being larger, the level 2 headings, and then you see the level 3 headings. And a couple more level 2 headings. So you can easily identify, and you can see how these headings then set apart the different topic areas and let the user see what's important and how the page is organized. And it not only helps the user, but web search engines also use this to identify the importance of the different sections of the web page. So used by both users and web search engines. Okay, another thing, notice that the next thing that we're going to add are hyperlinks. So notice that in this paragraph we have 3 hyperlinks. So a hyperlink is some text or an image that when you click on it, it takes you to a different page or to a different location within the same web page. So here is our very first one. So it is the title of the article, and we want to set it as a hyperlink. To do that, the tag that you use for hyperlink is an A tag. And that's what the opening tag looks like, and that's what the closing tag looks like. And in between the opening and the closing tag, you want whatever text is actually going to activate the link. So I wanted the entire title to be inside that A tag. So I surrounded it with the opening and closing A tags. Now if I go to look at my web page in the browser, nothing has changed. So one of the things that's absolutely essential to an A tag is to identify where it is going to link. So A tags don't do anything until you add an attribute. Now an attribute is information about a particular tag. And we're going to add this attribute in the opening A tag. It actually goes inside the tag. So it's got to be inside that less than, greater than bracket. And attributes always have a name, equal sign, and then in parentheses have a value. So that's what attributes look like. And you need to use the name of the attribute that actually exists. This is something you don't get to make up. Then the value can be a variety of things. In this case, our attribute name is href, and that's the hyperlink reference. And then the value of it is going to be the URL. Notice that in our, in our web page, right, in our content, we already recorded that, so I'm going to move it into those quotes. Oops, I missed it. Let me try again. All right, and I'm going to move it into those quotes. Now my line got really long, so I'm going to add a carriage return here. Say there's my opening A tag. There's all of the content in it. And there's my closing A tag. So now I just kind of put it all on one page. I can get rid of or spread it out so I can see it nicely. Now I'm going to get rid of those parentheses. And there I have a paragraph with an A tag in it. Now let's go look at it in the browser. Okay, now a couple of things have happened. Notice that we no longer see the URL, right? We put it in that href attribute. Attributes do not display on the web page. So we no longer see it. And notice that the text between the A tags has a color added to it, and it's underlined. Lots of browsers make these blue, and then they're underlined. All right, let's click on it. Oh, here's another thing that happens. Notice that our cursor is an arrow, and then as I move it onto a link, it changes to a hand. So it's another clue that this is a hyperlink. When I click on it, it goes to that location. So it changes the web page to that URL that was there. So here I've created my very first hyperlink. Couple of things to be careful of. One thing that is a common error is to forget the HTTP right here. So notice what happens. If I erase that now, I've got the entire URL except that beginning HTTP, and I save it. I come back and refresh it. It looks the same. So, well, actually it got blue. Notice what happened. When we first did it, it had a blue color. When we click on it, then it changes color. I'll show you that in a minute. Let's go ahead and check the URL now. We click on it, it no longer works. So without that HTTP, it actually turns into a broken link. So this is a really common error. So let's go back and make that change by making sure we put, so you've got to have the complete URL in there, including the very front part. Now, browsers won't show you that. The browsers will only show this much of the web page at the top. So watch, if I even put the whole thing, so I'm going to take the whole thing and put it in my browser. And there it is, and I push enter. Notice that it no longer shows that beginning part. So the browsers hide that initial prototype, right? They think, oh, users don't care about it, so I'm not even going to show it, but it's still there. Watch, when I copy this, so I copy it, and if I go over and just paste it anywhere, so I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom and paste it, it has all of it, including the HTTP. So you'll pick it up if you copy from a URL, it will be there, it'll be part of it. Okay, so that's the important part. Let me go back now and talk about how browsers style links. So here we have a link that is one color, and when you visit it and come back, it's another color. So when you very first load it, it's that brighter blue, and then once you visit it, it changes to a purple color. So notice that it changes, has a different color based on whether it has been visited or not. Okay, there is another attribute. Now this one is not required. The href attribute is required with an A tag. It just does nothing without it. And so you've got to have that. But there's another attribute that you can use. It's called target. If I can spell it right? The target attribute tells it where to open. So you notice that when I click on this page, it opens in the same tab. That's called the self. But target, you can also have it do blank. And here the keyword is _blank. And that opens it up in a different tab. So here we go. If I refresh, remember you need to save and refresh every time. And now I click on it. Now notice that it opened a brand new tab. So my other tab is still there, and it opened up the web page in another tab. So this is a nice feature. You can learn more about this or by going to the A tag in the HTML tag reference and looking down in a section of attributes. So look at all the attributes that are allowed. The href1 specifies the URL, and the target specifies where to open the link document. And these are your possibilities for values. So if you have a regular font, it's saying these are keywords, so you can use any one of these keywords. The default is self, so it'll open in exactly the same tab as it was. And the one that we used was blank, that opens it up in a new tab. If you have an italicized value for an attribute, that means it's going to be something that you put in there that is not a specified keyword. So this one would be the frame name of the frame that you want it to open in. Another nice part about the reference and how we use it. All right, now notice in this paragraph there are two more links. So the first one should be around journalist resource, and the third one should have the Content Thinker Academy. So go ahead and pause the video and turn those two into working links. All right, once you've got those coded, view them in the web page. Make sure they show up as links, that they're not seeing the URLs or the paragraphs. Oh, look right there, I have a space that I don't want, so I can go back and look where I must have that. So I must have a space right there. Sure enough, there it is. So I will get rid of that. And then I refresh it. Oh, I've got a carriage return. So that will show up as, remember, the carriage returns will be replaced with a space. So I'm going to get rid of that carriage return and then refresh it. And there, I don't have the space there anymore. All right. So now we've added hyperlinks. These are called text hyperlinks because they are text, and when you click on them, they link to another page. All right, at this point, let's talk a little bit about vocabulary. There are some words that I want you to really understand what the word means. So there is tag. So each one of these are an HTML tag. And you should know the difference between a closing tag and an opening tag. So again, two terms, opening tag, closing tag. And then attribute. And here's an attribute. There's one right there. And here's an attribute right there. And notice the attributes always come in name equal value combinations. So every time you do it, you're going to have a name, the equal sign, and then a value. And put the value in quotes. And then you have the content. So this is the part, what's between the opening and closing tag is the content. So notice that this opening tag is very long, but that's the opening tag. There's the closing tag, and what goes between it is the content. Now, one more word that I might not have used yet is an element, and an element is everything. It's the opening tag, the content, and the closing tag. So there's an A element. Here is a heading 2 element. It's the opening tag, the closing tag, and the content. So terminology: tag, opening tag, closing tag, attribute, name and value, and content. So be familiar with all of those things. Now notice how, remember how paragraphs were block elements? So you got a blank line before and a blank line after. So are heading elements. The H1 through H6, they're block elements, so you get a blank line before and a blank line after. When you have two block elements together, they share the blank line between them. So you don't get more than one. But notice that the A tag, right? A elements are inline elements, and that means they're not set apart from the content that they are embedded in. So there's no separation, and that's called an inline element. And so by default, A tags, A elements are inline. All right, now we made lots of progress. And we're going to stop now and work on overhead before we learn any more elements to go on the web page. We're going to work with overhead. So an important part of doing a web page is adding the correct overhead. This becomes really valuable information for the browser to be able to interpret what it is that you're doing. So the very first thing that we want at the top of our web page is the Doctype. And the Doctype will be different based on which version you're using. So Doctype, and we're using HTML5, so the Doctype for HTML5 is just simply !Doctype HTML. Now notice that the Doctype is all caps. This is actually not an HTML tag. It is information for the browser, letting the browser know which specific markup language is being used. And right after that, then we do start talking HTML, and we do that with the HTML tag. Now, notice what my browser did. My browser just gave me, as soon as I added the HTML tag, it gave me all of this structure. So it's trying to help me out here. I'm going to back up and I'm going to say, let me do it myself. So I didn't push enter too soon, and I just kept that opening HTML tag. So the HTML should surround all of your HTML, which means it'll be around everything except that Doctype. So I'm going to put the opening HTML tag there and the closing HTML tag down there after the body. So the HTML tag surrounds everything. Now there's one attribute that's important in the HTML tag, and that is the language attribute. So go ahead and add the language attribute. English is one value that you can use, just EN. Or you can do EN-US if you want US English. Either of those work out fine. But include that, and then right away the browser knows what language to interpret things at. And so it'll use the right displaying of that based on that specific language. Now, remember that inside the body is where all the content goes. So there we have all of the content, and then the HTML file ends. Between the HTML tag and the body is where we put information that is not going to display in the web page, but is going to be information for the browser. So, and there's a variety of things that we're going to add here. The first thing that we're going to add is a meta tag that identifies the browser character set. So it's a meta tag. We're going to add a few of these. Char set is the attribute that we want to use. And here we're going to say which character set we're going to use. And we're going to be using UTF-8 for our character set. This is another piece of information that's really valuable for the browser. So this meta tag should go right up to the top. You will see, and this is optional, so we can put all of these information tags here before the body. You will see in some of the HTML, you will see these surrounded with head tags. So if you're going to use a head section, then the head section it covers everything between the HTML and the body. So it's a different section. So there's the head section and the body section. Well, HTML5 made it so that the head section is not required. And some people recommend you use it and others don't. W3 School says still use it till people get used to not having it. The textbook doesn't use it. So I have not added it to our style guidelines. So you can either use the head tag or not. If you use it, all of these tags need to go inside it. You wouldn't have anything. Every tag then would be either in the HTML, either in the head section or the body section. I'm not going to use it. Okay, so there's the meta tag that identifies the character set. Another required part of this section is the title tag. All right, now notice that this is interesting. Notice that the meta tag is the first one that we have seen that doesn't have a closing tag. So we will see some of these, and their single tags don't have a closing tag. And we'll talk more about those as we add images. So meta is the first one that we've seen. Here, title tag has an opening and closing tag, and the content that we put between it. So here I can just put whatever I want to be my title, learning techniques for effective learning. All right, now I save that. Now let's go back and refresh our web page. Now here's our web page. That's our heading 1, right? Right there. Okay, now I'm going to refresh it so we can see where this title shows up. Notice that the title is not there. By the way, we got that downgrade. We moved down a little bit as we added that overhead. Things kind of lined up. But notice we don't see the title there. So where is this title? This is a very specific title. It's the title of the web page, and it shows up here. So it goes in the label of the tab. It also shows up as the title in search engine results, and it's used by search engines as well to identify something about the web page. So titles are important and required. You want to put something meaningful in there. Okay, those are really the only ones that are required. We are going to use a few more meta tags. So let me show you those ones that we're going to use. There's the one that comes by default. My editor obviously does that one by default. But the couple of others that I'm going to do is the one that says description. And whenever you have a name attribute, you also need a content attribute to go with it. So in here, you're going to put a brief description of the page, right? So this page discusses an article about effective learning techniques. Okay, so you just put a brief description in there. This line got pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on. You can span a tag across 2 lines, and that's fine. When you do that, make sure you don't put the carriage return inside quotes. So you don't want to put a carriage return in there or in there. Also notice in my editor when I do that, it changes the coloring a little bit. All right, the next meta tag that I'm going to add is the one for keywords. All right, and again, I add the name attribute, so I also want to add the content attribute. And here I will list keywords, and you separate them by comma. So whatever you want these to be, separate with commas. Study. Students might be a good one. All right, so put your keywords there. And these meta tags are used quite a bit, so you're going to want to be sure and fill these in, okay? Then the author. So the author is going to be, here you will put your own name. I'm going to put mine. All right, so you put the name of the author. So as you do pages, you'll add yours. And then the last one is the viewport. And the viewport, oops, sorry, I forgot the name. Name equals, and then I want the value to be in quotes. And content. Now in here, this is very specific what you want to do, and specific enough you might want to look it up on so you get it just right. So here's the viewport, and here's what you use for the content is width equals device width. And this, what this does is this makes it so that the browser can adjust, scale things based on the size of the device that the web page is being seen in. So this web page might be seen on a laptop, on a tablet, on a desktop, on a phone, on a variety of things. So this allows it to be more flexible based on the browser can know better how to display it on these variety of devices, right? The different size devices. All right, now we've added all of that overhead that we need. I suggest that you go ahead and create this overhead in a file that you can refer to often. In fact, if you get it just right, you will use this over and over again. So, and all of it stays the same except each time you will change the value of the content attribute for the description. You'll pick the keywords that you want to use. You can already preset it with your username there, and the viewport and the char set don't change. You also will change the title. So there's a few things you have to change, but this really gives you the whole structure. So again, look at the structure. It starts with the Doctype. Then you have the HTML tag, and everything is inside the HTML tags. And then you have the body section, which is where all the content goes, and the head section that contains all of the information that is meaningful to the browser but does not show up in the content of the web page. All right, the next thing that we're going to add are images. So we have a few images in here, and in content what we put for images is a description and a file name. And then in our folder, in our images folder, we have all those image files that we want to display on our web page. So notice that currently in our web page, what's showing up for those images is in fact just the description and the file name. So we want to change these so they actually show up as images in our web page. So I'm going to go to the first one, and it's right here. So it's the article.png picture, and here's the description. So the tag that makes images, the HTML tag, is img, and this is a single tag. It does not have a closing tag. All the information about that we need for this tag is going to be in attributes, and there won't be any content. So there's no closing tag. Now there are several tags that are like this. We've already seen the meta tag that is like this, and then we'll see other ones in the future. These are referred to as with different names. So W3 Schools call them empty tags. The textbook calls them void tags. Another name that I've heard is replaced tags, because these tags are replaced with something. This one will be replaced with an actual picture file. So, but they're single tags. They only have one single tag. So the image tag requires two attributes. The two attributes that it requires are src, and that stands for source. And what we want to put in here is the name of the file. So here we've got the name of the file in our content, so I'm going to move that and put it in there. The other one that is required is the alt, and this is it stands for alternate, and here's where you put alternate text, and this will be a description that somebody who is not seeing the image will see. And this will be used by somebody who has visual limitations, that they might not be able to see web pages well, so they have what's called a screen reader that reads them the web page. But screen readers can't read pictures, so what screen readers do is they'll read this description. The other time this will come up is when it can't find the image file, or if somebody has turned their images off. So a setting in the browser is that you can turn your images off and then they don't show up. So I'm going to save this now and go refresh it in the page and see what we get. Okay, so it didn't show up. It didn't show up. What we're missing here, actual path. So let's see what it looks like when it doesn't show up. So in here, it gives you a broken image file and that description, right? So it shows that description, that alt attribute, whatever the value of the alt attribute will display when the image doesn't show. All right, so the reason why it's not showing is because what the browser does is it looks exactly where it is. So right now we're in this file, learning.html. And if we look there, we're right here, right? Here's that file, learning.html. It says, look where you are, right? And look for this file called article.png. And it looks where it is and it can't find it. So we need to do what is called a relative address. It is wherever you are, give it the full path and the file name to find it. So what has to happen is where we are, you've got to go inside a folder called images, and then you can find the file article.png. So what we have to add here is the folder. We have to say from where you are, go inside the folder images, right? Go to images, look inside there for article.png. And now that's a complete address. So it's both the file that we're looking for and any path that we need to get to it. All right? If the article.png were in this same folder, right? If that was in that same folder, then we wouldn't have to put any path. It would just be the file name. So now let's go look and see how that works. And there the image shows up. That's exactly the image we were expecting. And it's displaying there nicely. Notice that when the image displays, you don't see the alternate text. Okay, there are several more images in here. Go see if you can find them. Let me see how many there are. There are actually 6 total, so we're working on one right here. Okay, well, before we go on, let me show you a couple more attributes that we can put in here. And these are not required, but recommended that you add the width and the height attributes. What these do is they allow the browser to set aside the right amount of space for the images. So pages load from top to bottom, and they'll load all the HTML first, and then they'll load the additional files. So this file will not load until after learning.html has fully loaded. So if you identify the width and the height, then the browser will allocate that much space before it adds this next paragraph. And then when it gets to when it loads the image file, it will load it in there. What this does is this reduces flickering, the movement of the page as it loads. If you don't identify height and width, then it doesn't allocate the space, it adds the paragraph, and then once it starts loading the pictures, things start moving around. So to get the width and the height, we want to actually go to the image file, and we can right click and look at properties if you're in Windows. If you're in a Mac, you're going to want to go to the information tab. So each file, when you have a file, will have an information button over here in the left hand side, so you're going to look for that and look in details, and it tells us it's 703 pixels wide and 129 pixels high. So the width and the height just need the numbers because they identify pixels. That's exactly what they do, is they just say how many pixels to set aside for the width and the height of the image. And so we just have to put the 703. I'm going to double check and make sure I got it right. So I go to properties, details, yep, 703 high, wide and 129 wide. So you want to make sure and put that on. Ultimately, it will always get to be the right size, but this allows it that when it first loads, it sets aside that and reduces flickering. All right, so those are all the things you need for an image file. Now, just a note, notice that this image is set apart, right? It looks like there's a blank line before and a blank line after. Images are actually inline elements, and if I had it in some sort of content, it would just flow directly with the content. Let's see if I can do that. But what we're seeing is we're seeing the blank line from that block element before and that block element after. We can demonstrate this inline by going ahead and putting it in a paragraph and typing some words right before and some words after, and then closing the paragraph and come back and refresh. And there's the paragraph, the image, right, it's all in one paragraph, and it's all in line with the content. The word, the image, the word, it's all in line. So image tags are inline elements as well. I'm going to get rid of those because I don't want that to show up. And I want the image to be by itself, so I've got it between a heading and a paragraph, and it'll show up that way. All right, there are 4 more images. Go ahead and pause the videos, and you complete those images by making sure you got the name right for the source, for the file. You've used the description. Notice that in our content we have already a description and the file name, so we're good to go, but you've got to give it that path. And then you need to add the height and width and get the height and width directly from the image file. All right, we're getting about done for the day. Now that you've got those image files done, let's verify how they look. And we can see how they look by going to the web page and refreshing and see if we can find them. There we are. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all of those images are showing up. All right, there's a couple of things we're not going to work with today that we'll work on the next activity. That is the list and the table. So for today, we're just going to comment them out. So the way that you do a comment in HTML is less than, exclamation point, hyphen, hyphen is how you open it, and then you use hyphen, hyphen, greater than bracket, and everything in between is a content. So notice how it changes the color depending on your settings on your editor, what color it will change, but it should be a distinctly different color than anything else. And you can use these to block out a single word, like just a part of a page, right? Part of a line. So I could just take out that part, or I can do several lines together. So no matter whether you're doing a part or multiple lines, it's exactly the same comment tag. Let's go ahead and do it to the table as well. So go ahead and comment on your code out the list and the table. And then go and look and see what happens in the browser. So you can go to the browser and refresh and see that the list is entirely gone, right? There's no list there where the authors are, and under results, we still have that paragraph, but the table itself is not showing up. So there we have the heading, the paragraph, and then the table is not showing up at all. So when you comment something, It doesn't show up in the browser at all. So you can use that to make notes to yourself, or like we're doing, to hide content or hide tags that we're not yet using. It's an effective way to do it. The one last thing that we want to do is to validate our code. So to do this, we're going to use the W3 Schools validator, or w3.org's validator, and validator.w3.org, and we're going to do it by file upload. So we click that middle tag, we choose the file. Again, you'll need to know how to find your file, and then open that, get that file, choose that file, and click check. And here it says document checking completed, no errors or warnings to show. That's what you want. If you do have an error here, then you'll want to correct it in your editor, save it, and then revalidate, and keep revalidating until you get no errors or no